Welcome back to Nigeria, the road to 2019. I'm Charles Aniegolu. Now, as you may have heard, the leaders of Chad, Nigeria, Niger and Cameroon are meeting in Chad today to discuss the upsurge in violence by Boko Haram. Since July, there have been at least 17 attacks against military bases in the region, according to the AFP news agency, with 40 Nigerian soldiers killed in an attack on a military base last week and more than 100 in the last month. The armies of the four countries are cooperating in the Lake Chad area in a multinational joint task force. Well, let's get independent analysis now about the worsening situation in the northeast and how that might affect Mr. Buhari's political fortunes in 2019. And for that, I'm joined now in the studio by two experts on security and Boko Haram. Ndubuisi Nwokolo is a senior researcher and policy leader from Next Year Security, Peace and Development, an international consulting firm that provides conflict mitigation and resolution strategies. And Senator Irebu is a Nigerian security analyst and publisher of Global Sentinel, an online magazine that brings professional insight and analysis to security issues. Thank you very much indeed to both of you for coming in. I'm going to start with you, Senator. Just to put this in perspective, give us your sense of what the agenda for this meeting in Chad is. I presume there was some sort of review of the security arrangement of this multinational joint task force in view of these recent security breaches.
Quite right, because that arrangement, that structure, there seems to have relaxed a little bit. You know, when they put this arrangement, MJTF, there was success initially, especially starting from the last administration, Jonathan government. It was actually because when the war was at its peak, Nigeria realized that there was no cooperation among the contiguous, the neighboring countries, Cameroon, Chad, and Niger, and it proved problematic. This could only, they have to solve this problem through the intervention of the former French president, Hollande. They had that meeting and had this agreement of hot pursuit into the territory, because what happened before, Boko Haram will use all these neighboring as safe haven, attack, and then Nigerian cannot, because going into the territory is like you're declaring war. So when they had that agreement, there was a success. You remember when the former administration gave that 6 weeks break before the 2015 election?
They essentially postponed the election.
Postponed. Yeah. There was a greater success. They were, you know, offensive from within Nigeria, Chadian military, Cameroonian military, and there was that. But over time, that arrangement kind of relaxed.
Right.
And there was an analysis that said we have a Chadian problem, you know, because without their cooperation, virtually we may not be able to succeed in what we're doing. So they saw that there is need to review the process because there was
and that's why they're meeting today.
Yes.
Right. And in your assessment, Mr. Nwokolo, there, you heard the president's spokesman talking earlier. What is your assessment of what he said? Is it do you agree with the government that Boko Haram, and they're still insisting on that, has been technically defeated?
Well, of course I don't agree with him, but from the angle he's coming from, you know, during the time of ex-president Jonathan, Boko Haram occupied an area they said was as big as Belgium, and looking at the time President Buhari took over and was able to pursue them to allow the territories, you know, return back to Nigeria. I understand that's his point of argument, but the issue remains that terrorism is a fluid conflict.
Absolutely,
it's not a trench war. So they could as well have relocated to another place. The fact they are not occupying an area does not in any way reduce their strength. And I think an issue that happened with the government of President Jonathan is what is repeating itself here. That is living in denial. Let's not deny it. Let's come out and say what the facts are. I had you asking the question. The earlier we agree what the facts are, the better for us to re-strategize. And if I'm to key into what Senator said, you find out that for a conflict like this, it's a conflict that you continue to change your approach from time to time. These guys are 2 or 3 steps ahead of you. They are like an ocean. You are like a sea. They see you, but you don't see them. Because you can't just start shooting, because you might be shooting somebody you don't know. That's why you are their target, but you don't know them. So that's why you continue to re-strategize. For what they are doing now, should have been what they should have been doing every 3 months. At each time they look at their process, their strategies and approach. What do we do? Do we pursue? Do we come back? Do we pursue? Do we come back? You don't wait until you see them hit you 17 times. Then you suddenly remember, I need to re-strategize.
That's a very interesting point that you've made there, because one of the things I was going to talk about was the attack on that village of Matele. Clearly a terrible loss for Nigerians, many soldiers killed, and to ask what is being done to apprehend those people. But I think you made the point very interestingly, and I'm going to bring Senator in here, that clearly the government and the army are in a difficult place, because the very nature of insurgents, as he pointed out, like Boko Haram, is that you can't really be sure where they are. I mean, so when the government retaliates, because I heard somebody saying that they've gone to retaliate using the Air Force, and they've bombed, I mean, the living daylights out of people in that area. You wonder, oh my God, collateral damage, civilians. I mean, when the government retaliates using something like the Air Force, you can't really be sure that you're getting the attacker and avoiding collateral damage, which raises the risk, doesn't it, of civilian casualties.
Yes, and this has been a problem, and some of the limiting factors for Nigerian armed forces, the issue of civilian casualties and the issue of human rights. When you read some of the human rights report by Amnesty International, they raise this issue, and their counter argument is that these are terrorists. The battle environment of asymmetric warfare is not like conventional one, whereby their enemies are identifiable, their territory is identifiable. This is fluid. They mix with civilians.
Right. So let's kill everybody then.
That's even though in reality it's difficult, and that's why it's difficult. But I just want to come back to what is said, which, you know, also the issue of this technical defeat. You know, governments seem to be in denial, and it's very dangerous. I say this, and I've always, wherever I have the opportunity, you remember when there was September 11 attack, I was careful to listen to President Bush. He told Americans, this war is going to be long, and it's going to be difficult, but at the end you will be victorious. Have you wondered why Americans are not complaining? This has been longer than Vietnamese war. But Americans, because they prepared their mind. But government seem not to prepare the mind of the public to understand the nature of the conflict they are involved. And this continued denial is not going to solve problem, because if you say Boko Haram is defeated today and tomorrow there's an attack, your soldiers are being killed, the body bags are being brought back. These soldiers are husbands to some people, they are brothers to some people, they are you know, husbands to some. They will feel it. So when you say defeated, where was the surrender? When you say someone is defeated, where is the surrender? No. Even where they sign a mystic, even in a mystic situation, you don't say the other one that signed, yeah, you defeated. Yes,
an armistice.
Let alone in a situation the enemy has not surrendered. He only changed tactics. He went back to classic guerrilla warfare as before. What they did was, when they felt the military was weak and they tried to
conventional
holding territory, try to actualize that caliphate, and it played into Nigerian military hands, because Nigerian military are best in conventional war. In fact, they've never lost a conventional war, Nigerian military. But where they're having difficult, which they should explain to okay, tell me, we have many insurgents all around the world. It's difficult to America is still in Afghanistan. As good as they are, if not the best, among the best, when it comes with biggest economy, best coalition with NATO, And you are trying to prove, because of maybe you want to give credit to the incumbent administration, you are lying to Nigeria.
So there's a political element to it.
There's a political element,
there's
pushing the military to be making some statement.
Well, I'm going to just bring you in there, because that really is a lot of what people have been saying, that there is a strong political element here. But beyond that, and you can talk about that and this as well, the wider question must be, can military force actually win the war and end the conflict with Boko Haram?
No, it has never happened. You can't use military tactics, or you can't use such military strategy to win an insurgency like terrorism. What in the issue here, the Nigerian state has failed to do two things. That is to identify the whole ideology behind it. There are so many ideologies behind it, even with the split groups going on.
Well, you could hear Garba Shehu there saying that there is no ideology.
There is an ideology, and that we need to understand. And secondly, there are you for this kind of conflict, you're supposed to be pursuing it either as a counter-insurgence and counter-terrorism. A counter-insurgence is driven by the government, not by the army. I heard him talking about building roads, education. These are the things you do under counter-insurgency, including stopping the recruitment. Have you ever had Nigerian government telling you, oh, we've done this program or this project to stop recruitment? No. The army can only do counter-terrorism. So you have the two coming together. Now what is happening is that the army has taken over both the counter-insurgency and counter-terrorism. Why? Because we have politicized the entire thing, bringing the army to the forefront instead of the Nigerian government to the forefront. So what is happening now is that the Nigerian army has now been brought to the mix of Nigerian politics. For instance, for a government who is campaigning to be re-elected using what the army is doing. I'm not saying only now that the President Buhari is going for a re-election. President Goodluck did the same thing.
Well, governments do that anyway, in any part of the world.
But when it comes to things of this, like war, you try as much as possible, you know, to let the army be neutral. And you find out that because of the Nigerian army being, you have the presence of Nigerian almost in the 36 states. They bring them in skirmishes and conflict that they shouldn't be there. You know, now you find out that
should be a police operation.
Good. You find out this fatigue going on. There's a military fatigue. Some of these guys have been there for 4 years. You cannot be in a war front for 4 years without even going home to see your family.
Well, let me ask you this, and I'll bring Senator in a minute here. But I mean, you work for a consulting firm that provides conflict mitigation and resolution strategies. Are you talking to the government at all?
Well,
about Boko Haram?
Yes, we are doing that. On Monday, we called a meeting of stakeholders, which we organized with Shehu Yaradua Foundation. And we even brought people from Presidential Committee on Northeast Initiative to be there, and some donor agencies. Part of what we found out is that there is no coordination. There is poor coordination of this conflict. Nigeria does not even understand what some of the aid agencies are doing. And there's this political economy of war going on in the area. Some of our soldiers are now fishermen selling cattle, you know. So the things
going, drop their guns and turn to selling cattle.
They are now engaging in things around there,
right?
You know. So, and we don't want to talk about the massive corruption going on, you know. I'm surprised he didn't say things about that. The corruption going on in the Northeast is as much as the one that went on.
Well, tell us about that corruption. Well, at least what you understand it to be.
Yeah, I'm not even going to talk about military procurement because it's never disclosed. But I'm going to talk about from the IDP camps. We saw the National Assembly trying to investigate NEMA about monies.
That's the National Emergency Management Agency.
About monies assigned to them, which has not been counted for. You find out that some of the corruption might not even be high-level corruption, but within, like the one I just stated, that you find out that our soldiers are now the middlemen. They've displaced the local communities and local middlemen who deals on fishes and cattle. They are the ones who are selling the things there now.
So, given what he's saying, Senator, if in fact there is an ideology that Boko Haram hold dear and ascribe to, surely this sort of behavior is going to make them even more angry and more determined to prosecute their fight against Nigeria and the Nigerian army.
Well, the ideology has been using kind of jihadist ideology, actually. You may
which eschews things like corruption and so on and so forth. In fact, that's one of the reasons why they started it in the first place.
So they use this kind of things as a recruitment drive, because when they tell some of their, look at what your government is doing. So these are things, some of the things that are, and now, like it's being said, this war, asymmetric warfare, is a war of winning the mind and souls of the populace, because the populace is the battle space, you know. Both the terrorists and the government is trying to carry the populace along. But what I find out, why the terrorists are doing a lot to you know, send message directly to the pop. Government seems to be talking over the population. That's why I see there's a detachment between the populace and what the military are doing. How? You will see that American soldiers will die in war in Afghanistan, or British soldiers. You will see funeral. You will see the nation will be arose when they will be buried. They will be given this national honor. There will be this kind of emotion attached to it. There will be flowers. There will be. You see, what are you doing? In
other words, they're celebrated and recognized for what for the sacrifice they've made for the nation.
And you are galvanizing the public emotional attachment to what is going on. But here there's so much detachment.
It's almost like they're fodder.
Yes,
that you can just, like, you know, goats or whatever, you get rid of them and you replace them.
No name, no recognition, nothing, the family. So there's the public are detached. So, okay, it's happening, soldiers become like a figure, a kind of a number game.
So is that something that is probably a very old method of dealing, very un-modern way of dealing with this stuff, where in the old days you hide everything, you know, you don't let people know, whereas the modern way of doing it is to bring, as he was saying, bring the public on board and make them part of it. But these guys are still doing it the old way, where it's like, well, let's pretend that everything is shipshape and seaworthy. If they've killed a lot of our people, we will not recognize that anybody's been killed. And we're not going to celebrate these people. We're simply going to pretend as if they'd never existed.
I think that's where we're getting things wrong. And that is why there is no this ownership of the conflict. Now, for instance, if you are driving, you know, an ideology to show the people that this war belongs to you, it will make that woman in that local community, that man in that local community, to give you that intelligence that you don't have, to go to the police and say, or go to the army and say, we saw some people in our communities whom we don't know who they are. The problem here is that we have a poor military intelligence, which is either there or not there, we're not sure. We should equally be building a community intelligence, as well as an international intelligence, which will help to fight this war. But the first one seems to be there, but nobody's sure. But the community intelligence is not there. Yes, we have the civilian JTF who have been helping them. But the issue is that, are you making them to own the conflict? Are you making them to know that this war is not between only the Nigerian state, which a lot of people don't understand it, and the Boko Haram or the insurgents, but that this conflict is between we the Nigerians, we the local communities against the insurgents. If you're able to do this, and this is an ideology that you have to sell, and you can only sell this through a counter-insurgency approach, not anti-terrorism. Because it's not about shooting. How many people are you going to shoot? So make the people own the conflict. They will supply you with the intelligence you need to persecute the conflict.
So clearly, Senator, a lot of issues here a lot of issues that clearly are going to be talked about for some time to come. How much is all this going to play out in the 2019 elections?
I don't know whether it will, because the scenario in 2015 may not be the same, but even though the facts may be the same, but the dynamics, let me say, the scenario may be but the dynamics may not be the same. So sometimes if people play ethno-religious politics, they don't care, they are blind to issues at hand. So that's why, but if his populace are sophisticated enough to ask questions, it may affect.
Right.
But I don't want to kind of undermine what may happen, because sometimes a week is enough to change.
Right. But let me, because so we're almost out of time. Right.
It will play.
Right. Let me just bring you in here. Is there enough for the opposition to grab onto and make this a real issue, this upsurge in violence and fighting that's happened in the last month or two?
They can, but does it help us? That was what this administration did in 2015, that they said we're going to fight Boko Haram to promise security without understanding. What I'm trying to say now is that this war, the more we try to bring politics into it, the more we cannot win it. So I think, you know, where I think this government equally missed it when they came on board, you know, without saying what the former administration couldn't do, emphasize so much on it. It's about bringing everybody, cross-political party approach, bringing everybody on board. And if the opposition try to play the same card, it might help them. But what will they do if they win? That's the most important.
And I think that's a very important point. And on that note, Ndubuisi Nwokolo, who's a senior researcher and policy leader from Next Year Security, Peace and Development, an international consulting firm that provides conflict mitigation and resolution, and of course Senator Irebu, who is a Nigerian security analyst and publisher of Global Sentinel, an online magazine that brings professional insight and analysis to security issues. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Mr. Charles.
Well, that's it for this edition of Nigeria, The Road to 2019. Join us again for a fresh edition tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.